The August heat pressed against my skin like something alive as I sat in my wheelchair at the entrance to my father's study, my hands trembling against the armrests. 24 years old, and this was supposed to be a family dinner. Instead, I'd arrived early, and now I was frozen in the hallway, listening to voices coming from behind the half-open door. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but when I heard my father's voice, heavy with that particular tone of disappointment I'd come to know so well, I couldn't move. Nina is a burden we can no longer afford. 3 years in that chair, and what does she do? Sits in her room, reading books. Beautiful face, brilliant mind, useless legs. The words hit me like the car that had stolen my ability to dance. My sister Carmela's voice followed, saccharine sweet and poisonous. Papa, be reasonable. Who would want her now? She was engaged to Marco before the accident. Look how fast he ran. My mother's sigh was audible even from where I sat. We must think practically. Perhaps a distant cousin? Someone who needs citizenship or money badly enough to overlook the situation. That's when I heard the third voice, low, commanding, edged with something dark that made every hair on my body stand on end. I'll take her. The study went silent. I pressed my hand against my mouth, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might shatter my ribs. Excuse me? My father's voice had gone very quiet, the way it did when he was truly shocked. Nina, I'll marry her. This week, if possible. That voice belonged to Dorian Ashcroft, Il Diavolo, the devil himself, and he had just claimed me like I was a piece of territory to be conquered. 3 years ago, I was Nina Cross, prima ballerina of the Metropolitan Opera. I spoke 4 languages, held a degree in economics from Columbia, and had the world at my feet, literally. I wore point shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and danced for audiences that included presidents and kings. Then came the accident. My sister's boyfriend, jealous of my engagement to Marco, the man he believed should have been his business partner, cut my brake lines. The car went over the embankment on the Pacific Coast Highway. I woke up in a hospital bed 3 weeks later to learn that I would never walk again. T10 complete spinal cord injury. The doctor spoke about it clinically, explaining nerve damage and rehabilitation and adaptive equipment. What they didn't explain was how everyone I knew would look at me differently, how my fiancé would ghost me before I even left the hospital, how my own family would start speaking about me in the third person, as if the accident had taken my mind along with my legs. I rolled backward as quietly as I could, my chair's wheels nearly silent on the marble floor. I needed to leave. I needed to think. But before I could turn toward the front entrance, the study door swung fully open. My father stood there, his face ashen. Behind him, I could see Carmela's shocked expression and my mother's hand pressed to her throat. And then I saw him. Dorian Ashcroft stepped into the light, and I forgot how to breathe. He was taller than I'd imagined, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from Carrara marble. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than a car, and his eyes, dark, intense, absolutely unreadable, locked onto mine. This was the man they called Il Diavolo, the youngest Don in the history of the Ashcroft family, who had taken control at 26 when his father was murdered. The man who had consolidated power so ruthlessly that even the Bratva whispered his name with respect. Nina. He said my name like a declaration, like he was marking territory. You heard. It wasn't a question. I lifted my chin, refusing to let him see how my hands shook. I did. Good. He walked toward me, his footsteps measured, predatory. When he reached my chair, he didn't crouch down to my eye level the way everyone else did, didn't tilt his head in that pitying way that made me want to scream. Instead, he simply looked at me, really looked, and I felt seen for the first time in 3 years. Your father and I have business to discuss, but first, you and I should talk, privately. I don't think, my father started. I wasn't asking permission, Vincent. Dorian's voice didn't rise, but something in it made my father step back. Then Dorian looked at me again. Unless you'd prefer to stay here and listen to them continue planning your future like you're not in the room? I should have been terrified. This man was dangerous, violent, connected to every dark corner of this city's underworld. Instead, I felt something that had been dead inside me for 3 years flicker back to life: curiosity. The garden, I said. There's a ramp. We sat in the garden, the late afternoon sun painting everything gold. Dorian had pulled an iron chair across from me, and now he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like being under a spotlight again, like those moments before the curtain rose when the stage lights found me in the darkness. Why? I asked finally. You could have anyone. Why would you want to marry someone like me? Someone like you, he repeated, and something flickered in his expression. You mean intelligent, educated, fluent in 4 languages, with a degree in economics from an Ivy League university? I blinked. You know about that? Nina, I know everything about you. I know you were the youngest prima ballerina in the Met's history. I know you speak Italian, French, Spanish, and English. I know you read 3 newspapers every morning, and that you've been managing your family's investment portfolio from your bedroom for the past year, making them more money than your father has in the last decade, though he doesn't know it. Heat flooded my face. How? I make it my business to know things. He leaned back, and for a moment, something almost soft crossed his features. My mother was paralyzed when I was 12. Assassination attempt meant for my father. She took 3 bullets to the spine. The doctor said she'd never walk again, and she didn't. But she was the strongest person I ever knew. She ran the family's charitable foundation from her wheelchair, brokered peace between warring families, and raised me to understand that strength has nothing to do with whether you can stand. The air between us felt charged, electric. I wanted to be angry, to push back against this stranger who had somehow seen more of me in research than my own family had in 3 years. But instead, I felt something dangerous unfurling in my chest. Hope. You still haven't answered my question. Why me? Why now? Dorian's eyes held mine, and when he spoke, his voice was low, honest in a way that made my breath catch. Because I need a wife who is intelligent, enough to run an empire, educated enough to navigate society, and brave enough to sit at a table with monsters and not flinch. Because I need someone who understands that strength comes in many forms. And because... He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. Everyone underestimates you, Nina. They see the chair and they stop looking. But I see everything. I see a woman who lost her career, her fiancé, her entire life, and instead of breaking, she learned how to build a new one. That's the kind of strength I need beside me. This is insane, I whispered. You don't know me. I don't know you. We can't just... Can't we? He tilted his head. Your family is planning to marry you off to whoever will take you. At least with me, you'll have power, resources, the ability to make your own choices. I'm not offering you rescue, Nina. I'm offering you a partnership. What kind of partnership involves me having no choice? The words came out sharper than I intended, edged. With 3 years of people making decisions for me, about me, without me. Something that might have been approval flickered in Dorian's eyes. Fair point. So let me be clear. This is a choice. You can say no. You can go back in that house and let your parents continue shopping you around like damaged merchandise, hoping some desperate second cousin needs a green card badly enough to overlook your situation. He said the last word with such disdain that I flinched. Or you can say yes to me, marry me, become Signora Ashcroft. And I promise you this, no one will ever pity you again. No one will ever speak about you like you're broken. Because when you're my wife, you're untouchable. You're feared. You're respected. And what do you get? I asked. Besides a wife who can't walk? I get a woman who understands economics and can help me expand into legitimate business. I get someone who speaks the languages I need for international negotiations. I get a partner who won't be easily intimidated or manipulated because she's already survived the worst thing she could imagine. And he leaned forward again, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. I get someone who will understand why I do what I do, why violence is sometimes necessary, why mercy is a luxury I can't often afford. I should have run. Every instinct should have been screaming at me to get away from this man who spoke so casually about violence, who looked at me with eyes that had undoubtedly watched terrible things. But instead, I felt that dead part of me burning back to life, hot and bright and terrifying. You want honesty? I met his gaze directly. I stopped believing in fairy tales the moment I woke up in that hospital. I don't need you to save me. I don't need you to love me. But if you're offering me power, if you're offering me respect, if you're offering me a way out of that house where my own mother can't look at me without tears in her eyes, then yes, I'll marry you. But understand this, Dorian Ashcroft. I won't be decorative. I won't sit quietly in a corner while you make decisions. If this is a partnership, it's a real one, or the deal is off. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then slowly, a smile curved his mouth. It was the first genuine expression I'd seen on his face, and it transformed him from coldly handsome to devastatingly beautiful. There she is, he said softly. There's the fire they've been trying to extinguish. Nina, I don't want you decorative. I want you dangerous. He stood, towering over me, and extended his hand. I'll need to show you something. Tonight, before you make your final decision. Something that will make you understand exactly what kind of life you're agreeing to. Can you be ready in an hour? I placed my hand in his, and the contact sent electricity racing up my arm. His hand was large, calloused in ways that suggested he didn't just order violence, he participated in it. I'll be ready. Good. He didn't let go immediately. Instead, his thumb brushed across my knuckles, a gesture so unexpectedly gentle that it made my breath hitch. 1 hour. And Nina? Wear black. An hour later, I sat in the back of a black SUV, Dorian beside me, and 2 armed men in the front seat. My family had protested, weakly, when Dorian announced we were leaving. But there was something in his voice, in his presence, that made even my father back down. Now we drove through streets that grew progressively darker, emptier, until we pulled up outside a warehouse in a part of Brooklyn I'd never been to. Where are we? I asked as Dorian opened his door. The truth, he said simply. One of the men, introduced only as Marco, lifted me from the car with professional efficiency, settling me in my chair as Dorian watched with an expression I couldn't read. Then Dorian leaned down, his mouth close to my ear. What you're about to see will frighten you, but I need you to understand what my life entails, what your life will entail, if you say yes. I need you to see the devil clearly, Tesoro, before you agree to dance with him. Tesoro, treasure. The endearment shouldn't have affected me, but it did. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete floors, high ceilings, the smell of oil and metal. But it was the man tied to the chair in the center that made my blood run cold. He was young, maybe 30, his face already bruised and bloodied. Around him stood 4 other men, all watching Dorian with an attentiveness that spoke of absolute loyalty and absolute fear. Dorian wheeled me forward without hesitation, positioning me beside him as he approached the captive. Nina, this is Anthony Greco. Until 3 days ago, he ran our waste management contracts in Queens. Then I discovered he'd been skimming 15% off the top and passing information to the Volkov Bratva. He said it conversationally, as if discussing the weather. The man, Anthony, looked at me, and I saw hope flicker in his eyes. He thought I would intervene, that I would be horrified and demand mercy. Dorian saw it too. Don't look at her for salvation, Anthony. She's smarter than that. Then he turned to me. This is the question I need you to answer, Tesoro. This man stole from my family, endangered our operations, betrayed our trust. In my world, in the world you're about to enter, betrayal has only one consequence. The question is, can you live with that? I looked at Anthony Greco, at his pleading eyes, at the blood already spilled. Then I looked at Dorian, at this man who was offering me everything I'd lost and more, but only if I could accept the darkness that came with it. I thought about my sister's boyfriend, who had cut my brake lines and stolen my life, who had never been caught, never been punished, who walked free while I would never walk again. I thought about 3 years of pity, of being treated like broken glass, of watching my own family discuss my future like I wasn't even human. Betrayal has consequences, I said quietly, and I understand that your world doesn't have the luxury of forgiveness. Dorian's eyes blazed. This is not a test you're supposed to pass by giving me what I want to hear, Nina. This is real. What happens next is real. If you can't stomach it, tell me now. I met his gaze steadily. I was a ballerina, Dorian. Do you know what that means? It means I spent hours every day bleeding through my point shoes. It means I danced on broken bones and torn ligaments because weakness wasn't an option. It means I understood that beauty requires sacrifice, sometimes brutal sacrifice. I'm not naive enough to think your world is any different. So don't patronize me by assuming I'll faint at the first sign of blood. Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. He turned to the men. Leave us, all of you. They filed out, Marco shooting me one last concerned glance before disappearing. Now it was just the three of us, Dorian, me, and Anthony Greco. Dorian pulled a gun from his shoulder holster. The metal gleamed dully in the warehouse lights, beautiful and terrible. Last chance, Tesoro. You can look away. You can wait in the car. You can call this entire thing off, and I'll take you home, no questions asked. I thought about it. God help me, I really did. This was my exit, my chance to go back to safety, to the known world, even if that world saw me as broken and pitiful. But then I thought about the look in Dorian's eyes when he'd said he saw my strength, about the possibility of power, of respect, of mattering again. Do what needs to be done, I said, and I didn't look away. The shot echoed through the warehouse, loud and final. Anthony Greco slumped forward, and I watched the life leave his eyes. I waited for horror to come, for disgust, for the urge to vomit or scream or cry. Instead, I just felt still, calm, like something that had been twisted inside me for 3 years had suddenly straightened. Dorian holstered the gun and turned to me, his face grave. You didn't flinch. No, most people would have. I'm not most people. I looked up at him. And you needed to see that. That's why you really brought me here. Not to scare me off, but to see if I could handle it, to see if I'd break. Yes. No apology, no softening, just truth. Can you handle it? I glanced at the body, then back at him. He betrayed you, endangered people who depend on you for protection. In your world, that mercy would be seen as weakness, and weakness gets people killed. So yes, Dorian, I can handle it. The question is, can you handle a wife who understands your world a little too well? His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. Nina, I'm counting on it. Then he leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture so unexpectedly tender it made my eyes burn. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we'll get married. City Hall. Small ceremony. My men, your immediate family if they choose to come, and then you become mine. All the power, all the danger, all the darkness. Still yes? I reached up, covering his hand with mine. Yes. Good. He straightened, pulling out his phone. Marco, send in the cleanup crew, and call Father D'Angelo. Tell him I need him to perform a wedding tomorrow at the estate. 9 a.m. sharp. He hung up and looked at me again. I'm not going to apologize for what I am, Nina, for what our life will be. I'm not asking you to. I surprised myself with how steady my voice was. I just need one promise from you. Name it. Never lie to me. Never hide me away. Never treat me like I'm fragile because of this. I touched my chair. I'm your partner, or I'm nothing. There's no middle ground. Dorian crouched down then, bringing himself to my eye level for the first time. Up close, I could see small scars on his jaw, the shadow of stubble, eyes so dark they were nearly black. Mia Regina, he said softly, reverently. My queen. There's never been any middle ground. From the moment I saw your photograph, read your file, understood who you really were beneath what they saw, you were always going to be my queen, or you were going to be nothing. I don't do halfway, I don't do gentle, and I sure as hell don't do pity. So here's my promise, Tesoro. I will never lie to you, I will never hide you, and I will sure as fuck never treat you like you're anything less than exactly what you are, the strongest woman I've ever met. Then he kissed me. Not on the forehead this time, but on the mouth, hard and claiming and absolutely devastating. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head back, and I opened for him without thinking, without hesitating. The kiss tasted like danger and promises, and the kind of future I'd thought died with my ability to walk. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Tomorrow, he said roughly, you become Nina Ashcroft. And the day after that, this city learns what happens when they underestimate the devil's wife. The wedding was nothing like I'd imagined as a girl. No white dress, no church filled with friends and family, no fairy tale ending. Instead, I wore a simple black dress. Dorian had sent it to the house that morning, along with a box containing a diamond necklace that probably cost more than my parents' house. My family didn't attend. My father had tried to talk me out of it until Dorian's men arrived to collect me, at which point he'd gone very quiet and very pale. Carmela had actually locked herself in her room. Only my mother appeared at my door as I prepared to leave, her eyes red from crying. Bella, she whispered, using the nickname she hadn't spoken since before the accident. You don't have to do this, we'll find another way. I looked at her, this woman who had given birth to me but had stopped seeing me the moment my legs stopped working. Mama, I love you, but you stopped fighting for me a long time ago. Dorian is giving me a chance to fight for myself. He's a monster, Nina. Do you understand what you're marrying into? I thought about Anthony Greco, about the warehouse, about the coldness in Dorian's eyes when he pulled that trigger. Yes, I said. I understand perfectly. The ceremony was held in the garden of Dorian's estate, and calling it an estate was an understatement. The property sprawled across 10 acres in the Hamptons, with a main house that looked like it had been transplanted from Tuscany, complete with stone walls, terracotta tiles, and gardens that would have made Versailles jealous. Father D'Angelo was older, with kind eyes that had seen too much, and he didn't flinch when he saw me roll down the makeshift aisle, a bouquet of blood-red roses in my lap. Dorian stood at the altar in a black suit, his face unreadable, flanked by 4 men I'd later learn were his most trusted: Marco, his cousin and consigliere; Luca, head of security; Giovanni, who ran their legitimate businesses; and Sal, the oldest, who had served Dorian's father before him. No one gave me away. I rolled myself to Dorian's side, and when I arrived, he held out his hand. I took it. Dearly beloved, Father D'Angelo began, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Nothing about this was beloved. This was business, strategy, survival. But when Dorian said his vows, looking into my eyes with an intensity that stole my breath, I wondered if maybe it could become something more. I, Dorian Ashcroft, take you, Nina Cross, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to honor and protect, in power and in darkness, until death tears us apart. My turn. My mouth was dry, my hands trembling slightly. I, Nina Cross, take you, Dorian Ashcroft, to be my lawfully wedded husband, to honor and stand beside, in strength and in shadow, until death tears us apart. The ring he slipped on my finger was a platinum band with a black diamond the size of my thumbnail. Unusual, beautiful, dangerous, like everything about this man. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Father D'Angelo's voice was gentle. You may kiss your bride. Dorian cupped my face in both hands, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. Then he leaned down and kissed me like he was staking a claim, like he was branding me, like he was sealing a promise that went far beyond words. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. Mia Mowgli, he murmured. My wife. Mine now. And God help me, I felt it in my bones. I was his, completely, irrevocably, terrifyingly his. The reception was small, just the men who had witnessed the ceremony, and a few others I didn't recognize. They toasted us with champagne and whispered congratulations that sounded more like condolences. I watched them watch me, saw the doubt in their eyes, the questions. This was Il Diavolo's wife? This broken girl in a chair? But Dorian kept me at his side, his hand resting possessively on my shoulder, and no one dared voice their doubts aloud. Tired? He asked me after the third toast, his mouth close to my ear. A little. Truth was, I was exhausted. The emotional weight of the day, of the decision I'd made, was crushing me. Come, let me show you your new home. He wheeled me himself through the estate, ignoring the surprised looks from his men. I'd expected him to have a guard do it, to maintain some distance now that the deal was sealed. Instead, his hands stayed gentle on the handles of my chair, and his voice was low as he pointed out various rooms. Library, 2,000 volumes, mostly Italian and Latin, but I've been expanding the collection. Dining room, Marco's wife occasionally guilt-trips me into hosting actual dinners. Kitchen, I have a chef but he's off on Sundays if you want privacy. Theater, you have a theater? Projection room, really. 70-inch screen, soundproofing. Don't judge me for enjoying my movies. There was something almost boyish in his tone, and I found myself smiling despite everything. Then we reached the main staircase, and my stomach dropped. Of course, this beautiful house, and I couldn't access half of it. Dorian must have felt me tense because he stopped. Nina. I looked up at him, hating the burn behind my eyes. It's fine. I'm used to... Look. He pointed, and I followed his gaze. There, beside the staircase, was a lift. Not a hospital-style chairlift, but something sleek and modern, integrated so seamlessly into the architecture I'd missed it entirely. Installed last week, he said quietly. Every floor. The entire house is accessible. The bathrooms have been retrofitted, the doorways widened, the counters in the kitchen are adjustable height. This is your home, Nina. Not a place you have to navigate around obstacles. Your home. The tears came then, hot and unexpected. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to suppress the sob building in my chest. Hey. Dorian crouched down, pulling my hands away gently. What's this? No one, my voice broke. In 3 years, no one has ever... My parents' house still has stairs at the front entrance. I have to go through the garage like I'm cargo. And you retrofitted an entire estate before you even met me? I told you. I researched you. I knew what I needed to do to make you comfortable. This isn't comfortable, Dorian. This is seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as an inconvenience to work around, but as a person who deserves full access to her own life. He wiped my tears with his thumbs, his touch surprisingly gentle. You're my wife now. That means this is your domain as much as mine. More, even. You're the queen of this house, Nina. And queens don't navigate around obstacles. They remove them. He scooped me up then, lifting me from my chair like I weighed nothing. My arms instinctively wrapped around his neck, and I breathed in the scent of him. Cedar and gunpowder and something uniquely Dorian. What are you doing? Taking my wife to our bedroom. Our bedroom. The words sent heat pooling low in my stomach. He carried me up the stairs, not using the lift, some statement I didn't quite understand yet, and down a hallway lined with art that probably cost more than small countries. The bedroom was enormous, all dark woods and soft lighting, with windows overlooking the ocean. And dominating the space was a bed the size of my old apartment, covered in charcoal silk sheets. Dorian set me down on the edge of it, then retrieved my chair from the lift when it arrived moments later. But I didn't move into it. Instead, I stayed where I was, looking up at this man, who was now my husband. "We need to discuss sleeping arrangements," I said, trying to sound clinical, professional. "Do we?" He shrugged out of his jacket, loosening his tie. "We're married, Tesoro. I think the sleeping arrangements are fairly standard." I meant, God, why was this so hard? "I don't expect. I know this is a business arrangement. We don't have to have to what? Consummate our marriage?" He stalked toward me, predatory and purposeful. "Is that what you think? That I married you for business and nothing more? Didn't you?" I tilted my chin up, refusing to be intimidated. "You needed a wife with specific qualifications. I fit the bill. It's transactional." "Nina." He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "If this was purely transactional, I would have chosen someone who wouldn't challenge me. Someone docile, grateful, easy. You are none of those things, and that's exactly why I want you." "You don't know me well enough to want me." "Don't I? I know you bite your lower lip when you're thinking. I know you clench your right hand when you're angry. I know you've been keeping yourself contained for 3 years because everyone around you treated you like you were seconds from shattering. But you're not fragile, Nina. You're steel wrapped in silk, and I want every single dangerous, beautiful, sharp-edged piece of you." His words were unraveling something inside me, some carefully maintained wall I'd built to protect myself. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of me? Of this? Of wanting something again?" I stopped letting myself want anything after the accident. It hurt too much when it was taken away. Dorian leaned down, his forehead touching mine. "Then here's what we'll do. Tonight, we sleep. Just sleep. No expectations, no pressure. Tomorrow, and every day after, we build this at whatever pace you need. But understand, Tesoro, I meant my vows. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine, ferociously." I nodded, exhaustion suddenly crashing over me. "Okay. Okay." He kissed my forehead, then moved to the walk-in closet. When he emerged, he was holding a nightgown, soft, expensive, black silk. "Let me help you." What followed was the most intimate, non-sexual experience of my life. Dorian undressed me with clinical efficiency, his hands gentle but sure, never lingering inappropriately, but never treating me like I was made of glass. He'd clearly done this before. I remembered his mother, and something about that made my throat tight. When I was in the nightgown, he lifted me again, pulling back the sheets and settling me against the pillows. Then he disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard water running. He emerged in black silk pajama pants, his chest bare, and my mouth went dry. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, all lean muscle and old scars, his tattoos telling stories I didn't yet know how to read. The one over his heart caught my attention, a rose wrapped in thorns, so detailed I could see individual drops of blood on the petals. He caught me looking. My mother's favorite flower. She sounds like an incredible woman. She was. She taught me that strength and softness can coexist, that the gentlest people can also be the most deadly. I think... He slid into bed beside me. "I think she would have liked you." He pulled me against him, and I stiffened for just a moment before relaxing into his warmth. His arm wrapped around my waist, holding me close but not tight, safe but not trapped. "Sleep, Mia Regina," he murmured against my hair. "Tomorrow, Your real life begins. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For one disoriented moment, I thought I was back in my apartment from before, that the accident had been a nightmare and I'd wake up to my normal life. Then I felt the silk sheets against my skin, saw the unfamiliar room, and remembered. I was married to a mafia boss who had killed a man in front of me 48 hours ago. The bathroom door opened, and Dorian emerged in a towel, water still beading on his shoulders. "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband." The words felt strange in my mouth, but not unpleasant. He dressed efficiently: suit pants, white shirt, shoulder holster, gun. Watching him arm himself should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt oddly domestic. "Breakfast?" he asked, buttoning his cuffs. "Yes, but I know you can. Let me anyway." He lifted me into my chair, which was beside the bed exactly where I'd need it, and then wheeled me to the lift. Breakfast was laid out on the terrace: pastries, fruit, coffee, and what looked like homemade focaccia. 3 men stood nearby, trying to look like they weren't watching us. Dorian noticed my glance. "Security, you'll get used to it." "Will I?" "You'll have to. I have enemies, Nina. And now you're the fastest way to hurt me, which means you need protection." The weight of that settled over me. "How many people want you dead?" "Currently? 7 organizations that I know of. Probably a few I don't." He said it casually, spreading butter on bread. "The Volkov Bratva has been making noise about expanding into our territory. The Irish in South Boston think they can push back on our shipments. And there's always some ambitious idiot in our own organization who thinks he can do better." "That doesn't scare you?" "It's the business, Tesoro. The day I stop having enemies is the day I'm dead, because it means I've gone soft." I sipped my coffee, thinking. You need to diversify. Excuse me? Your revenue streams. You're too dependent on traditional operations, waste management, construction, shipping. But the world is changing. You need legitimate fronts that actually make money, not just launder it. Tech investments, real estate development, maybe even pharmaceuticals, the legal kind. Dorian set down his coffee, staring at me. Go on. Your Italian connections give you access to manufacturing that's prohibitively expensive in the US. You could import high-end goods, furniture, textiles, automotive parts. You've got the shipping infrastructure already. The legitimate business could fund expansion, reduce law enforcement scrutiny, and give you leverage with the families who are still operating like it's 1972. You've been thinking about this. I've been reading your financial reports for the past 2 weeks, the ones you left in the study. His eyebrow rose. I left those there deliberately. I wanted to see if you'd look, and what you'd think if you did. You were testing me. I was, and you just passed spectacularly. He leaned back, a smile playing at his lips. When's the last time anyone challenged my business strategy? Probably never, since you kill people who betray you. There's that sharp tongue I married. He stood, pulling out his phone. Marco, clear my afternoon schedule. I need Nina at the 3 o'clock with the Bertelli family. Yes, I'm serious. She's consulting on the new venture. No, she'll be fine. She's tougher than you are. He hung up and looked at me. You just got yourself a job, Mrs. Ashcroft. 3 p.m., we meet with the Bertelli family to discuss a partnership in commercial real estate development. They're going to expect me to bring muscle. Instead, I'm bringing brains. Think you can handle it? My heart raced. This was it. My chance to prove I was more than decorative, more than pitiful. What's the project? Mixed-use development in Long Island City, residential, commercial, parking. The Bertellis have the construction contracts, we have the financing and the political connections. But they've been skimming on the last 3 projects, and I need to renegotiate terms without starting a war. Why not just kill them like you did Anthony? The question came out sharper than I intended. Dorian didn't flinch. Because Anthony was a soldier who betrayed us. The Bertellis are a family with their own soldiers, their own connections. Killing them would start a war that would cost more than their thieving. Sometimes, Tesoro, the smart play is negotiation. You just have to make sure they know war is still an option. I nodded slowly, my mind already working through the angles. I'll need to see the contracts from the last 3 projects, the original bids versus actual costs. And I need to know what our maximum, acceptable loss is on this partnership. Dorian's smile was fierce and proud. You're going to be magnificent. 3 hours later, I sat in a conference room in one of Dorian's legitimate business offices, financial reports spread across the accessible height table he'd had installed that morning. Marco stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching me with obvious skepticism. Luca was by the door, and Giovanni sat across from me, his expression carefully neutral. You're bringing her to the Bertelli meeting, Marco said flatly. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. Dorian leaned against the table beside me, close enough that I could feel his body heat. Nina has a degree in economics from Columbia. She speaks fluent Italian, and she's analyzed their numbers better than our accountants did. With all due respect, boss. Which means no respect at all, I interrupted, not looking up from the spreadsheet I was annotating. Go ahead, Marco. Say what you're thinking. That I'm a liability. That I'll be a distraction. That the Bertellis will see my chair and think Dorian's gone soft. Marco's jaw clenched. You can't know what these meetings are like. The Bertellis are old school. They'll see a woman in a wheelchair and assume I'm weak. I finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Good. Let them underestimate me. Makes my job easier. Dorian's hand landed on my shoulder, a gesture of support and possession. Nina is my wife. That makes her part of this family, part of this business. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me, directly. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Marco held Dorian's stare for a moment, then nodded curtly. Understood. Good. Now, Nina, what did you find? I turned the laptop toward them, pulling up my analysis. The Bertellis have been inflating material costs by an average of 23% across all 3 projects. They're using fake invoices from shell companies, here, and here, to justify the overruns. The money gets kicked back to Bertelli personally. We've lost approximately $4.2 million over 3 years. Giovanni whistled low. How'd you find that? The invoice numbers follow a pattern. They're sequential from the same company but dated months apart, which is unusual. I cross-referenced them with market rates for concrete, steel, and lumber during those time periods. The markups don't make sense unless someone's cooking the books. Dorian's eyes were blazing with something that looked like pride and possession mixed together. And your recommendation? We go in understanding they've stolen from us, but we don't lead with that. We present the new project as a partnership expansion. We complement their previous work. Then, casually, we mention we've hired a new forensic accountant, me, who's been reviewing all our books for tax optimization. We ask if they'd be willing to review their invoices to help us reconcile some discrepancies. If they're smart, they'll understand the threat. They'll agree to better terms on the new project to avoid us digging deeper into the old ones. Marco was nodding slowly now, the skepticism fading from his expression. And if they push back? Then we dig, we expose the theft, and we give them a choice, make restitution and accept new terms, or we walk and we make sure every family in the 5 boroughs knows the Bertellis can't be trusted. That'll cost them more than $4.2 million in future contracts. Silence. Then Luca started laughing. Boss, where the fuck did you find her? Luck, Dorian said, but his hand squeezed my shoulder. Pure luck and perfect timing. Giovanni stood, extending his hand to me. Welcome to the family, Nina. I think you're going to fit in just fine. I shook his hand, seeing the respect in his eyes. Thank you. Now let's go make the Bertellis very uncomfortable. The Bertelli meeting was held in a private dining room at an Italian restaurant in Little Italy. As we entered, Dorian pushing my chair himself despite Marco's offer, I saw 5 men rise from their seats. The eldest, Vincent Bertelli, had the weathered face of a man who'd spent 40 years in construction. His eyes went to me, then to Dorian, confusion flickering across his features. "Dorian," he said carefully, "we weren't expecting additional attendees. This is my wife, Nina." Dorian's voice was pure steel wrapped in velvet. "She's joining us today because she's been reviewing our financial portfolio. I thought she might have insights into our partnership going forward." I watched the calculation happen in Vincent's eyes, the brief flicker of relief. A woman he could handle. In a wheelchair, even better. She wouldn't be a threat. Perfect. "Of course. Welcome, Mrs. Ashcroft." He didn't offer to pull out my chair because there was no chair to pull out. Instead, he sat back down, already dismissing me. Dorian seated himself beside me, Marco and Luca flanking us, the Bertellis. Had 3 others with them, sons or soldiers, I couldn't tell yet. "So," Vincent began, "we're here to discuss the Long Island City project. My boys have run the numbers, and we're looking at $60 million total investment for the residential towers. Your financing, our construction, 50-50 profit split as usual." "Actually," I said quietly, and every eye turned to me, "we'd like to discuss adjusting those terms." Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Is that so? And what would a—" He paused delicately. "What would you suggest, Mrs. Ashcroft?" 60-40, in our favor." I opened my tablet, pulling up the projections I'd built. "Your costs have historically run over budget by significant margins. We'd like to cap cost overruns at 10% before profit-sharing adjustments kick in." I watched the color drain slightly from Vincent's face. Beside him, one of his sons, Anthony, I'd learned from the brief, stiffened. "That's not how we've done business," Vincent said carefully. "You're right," Dorian said, his voice pleasant. "We've been very accommodating in the past, but Nina here, she's been going through all our books for tax purposes, making sure everything is reconciled properly, and she found some interesting discrepancies." I slid a sheet across the table. "These are invoices from your projects, material costs specifically. I'm sure it's just accounting errors, but we'd love to sit down with your people and go through them. Make sure we have clean books before we start a new venture together." Vincent picked up the sheet, and I saw his hand shake slightly. He knew. He knew I'd found the theft. The question was what he'd do about it. "These numbers look correct to me," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm sure they do. To the naked eye, everything seems fine." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice gentle, reasonable, like we were discussing flower arrangements instead of theft and consequences. "But when you cross-reference them with market rates, with competitor bids, with the actual delivery schedules from the steel mills, well, things stop adding up. Now, I'm not suggesting anything untoward happened. Mistakes occur. Paperwork gets confused, right?" Vincent set the paper down carefully. "Right. Mistakes happen." "Exactly. So here's what I propose. We move forward with Long Island City on the revised terms, 60-40, with cost overrun caps. That gives you incentive to keep the project tight and profitable for both of us. And in return, we don't need to waste time and resources doing a full forensic audit of past projects. We just move forward. Clean slate." The silence stretched. I could feel Dorian's satisfaction radiating beside me, could see Marco's reassessment of me happening in real time. Vincent looked at his sons, then back at me. "You're not what I expected." "Few people are, when you really look at them, Mr. Bertelli." I smiled pleasantly. "So, do we have a deal?" He stood, walked around the table, and extended his hand. 60-40, with the caps. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Ashcroft." I shook his hand firmly. "I protect my family's interests, Mr. Bertelli. I'm sure you understand." As we left the restaurant 20 minutes later, I could feel the tension draining from Dorian's men. In the car, Marco turned around from the front seat. Mrs. Ashcroft, I owe you an apology. You thought I'd be a liability. It's fine. I'd think the same thing if our positions were reversed. You just saved us $4.2 million and improved our terms on a $60 million project without firing a single shot. He shook his head. That's impressive. Thank you, Marco. I glanced at Dorian, who was watching me with an expression that made heat pool low in my belly. I told you I wanted to be useful. Useful, Dorian repeated, his voice low and rough. Tesoro, you are fucking magnificent. Later, in his office at the estate, Dorian pulled me into his lap, my chair beside his desk. Do you have any idea what you just did? Saved you $4.2 million? You made them respect you, not because you're my wife, but because you're smarter than they are. The Bertellis just learned that underestimating you is a mistake. So did my men. His hand cupped the back of my neck, thumb stroking my pulse point. I knew you were intelligent, Nina. I knew you were educated. But watching you work, seeing you dissect their operation and back them into a corner without raising your voice. Christ, Tesoro, you're perfect. Not perfect, just prepared. But I was smiling, warmth flooding through me. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. Like Nina, not the broken ballerina, not the paralyzed daughter, but me. The woman who could command a room with numbers and strategy instead of grace and movement. Take the compliment, Dorian murmured, and then he kissed me. This kiss was different from the claiming ones before. This was hunger and pride and something deeper, wasn't ready to name. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his shirt, and when we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I'm falling in love with you, he said quietly. That wasn't part of the plan. My heart stopped. Dorian. I know, it's too soon. We barely know each other. This was supposed to be a partnership, not a romance. But watching you today, seeing you become exactly what I knew you could be. I'm falling, Nina. And I thought you should know. I touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. I'm scared. Of me? Of this. Of caring about someone who lives the way you do, who makes enemies for breakfast and kills people in warehouses. I know what I signed up for intellectually, but emotionally. You're afraid I'll die and you'll be alone again. Yes. He pressed his forehead to mine. I can't promise you I won't die. I can't even promise you I won't die violently. But I can promise you this. While I'm alive, you will never be alone. You will never be pitied. You will never be anything less than the queen of this empire. And if I do die, you'll have the resources, the connections, and the respect to rule it yourself. You'll never be helpless again, Nina. I've made sure of that. Tears burned behind my eyes. You really see me, don't you? Not the chair, not the limitations, just me. I see you, Mia Regina. All of you. The strength and the fear and the brilliance and the vulnerability. I see the woman who danced on broken bones and the woman who watched me kill a man without flinching. I see the woman who just crushed Vincent Bertelli with a spreadsheet and a smile. I see you, Nina, and I'm in awe. I kissed him again, pouring 3 years of isolation and fear and desperate hope into it. Take me to bed, I whispered against his mouth. Really take me to bed. I'm done being afraid. His eyes blazed. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. That night changed everything. Dorian carried me upstairs, laid me on silk sheets, and proceeded to worship every inch of my body with a reverence that made me cry. He was patient, careful, asking permission at every step. But when I gave that permission, he was anything but gentle. He was demanding and possessive and overwhelming in the best possible way. Afterward, as I lay in his arms, trembling and sated and completely undone, he pressed kisses to my shoulder. Mine, he murmured. Forever mine. Forever yours, I agreed. And I meant it. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. I became a permanent fixture at Dorian's business meetings, my financial acumen quickly earning me respect throughout the organization. I renegotiated contracts, identified embezzlement schemes, and built legitimate business ventures that brought in millions while reducing our legal exposure. The families initially scoffed at Il Diavolo's disabled wife playing businesswoman. Then I cost the Marchetti family $3 million in a shipping contract dispute by finding a legal loophole in their favor clause. After that, they started treating me with wary respect. I learned the geography of Dorian's body, every scar, every tattoo, every sensitive spot that made him groan. I learned the rhythms of his organization, the ebb and flow of violence and negotiation that kept the empire running. And I learned that I was capable of more moral flexibility than I'd ever imagined. When Dorian came home with blood on his knuckles, I cleaned his hands without asking questions. When he needed me to smile at a politician taking bribes, I did it flawlessly. When he asked my opinion on whether to make an example of a disloyal captain, I gave him honest strategic advice, even knowing what my advice would cost that man his life. I was changing. Or maybe I was just becoming who I'd always been underneath the ballerina's grace and the daughter's obedience. But that transformation came with a cost. My family stopped calling. My mother sent one letter, begging me to leave. That monster, before it was too late. I wrote back once, "I'm exactly where I belong." And I was. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. Until the night everything went to hell. I was in Dorian's office, reviewing acquisition proposals for a chain of restaurants, when Marco burst through the door without knocking. "Boss, we have a problem." Dorian looked up from his own paperwork, instantly alert. "Talk." "The Volkov Bratva just hit our warehouse in Red Hook, burned it to the ground. 4 of our men dead, another 6 in the hospital." The temperature in the room plummeted. "When?" 20 minutes ago. They left a message." Marco's jaw clenched. "They want a meeting. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. They say if you don't show, they'll hit another location every 6 hours until you do." I watched Dorian's face go absolutely cold, his eyes turning into chips of black ice. This was Il Diavolo, the version of him that most people saw. Ruthless, calculating, deadly. "Nina, go upstairs." "No." Both men looked at me. "No?" Dorian's voice was quiet, dangerous. "This is going to be a discussion about war, Tesoro. You don't need to be part of this." "Yes, I do." I rolled closer to the desk. "I'm not decorative, remember? I'm your partner, which means I'm part of this whether you like it or not." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then slowly he nodded. "Call everyone. I want all the captains here in an hour. And Marco, find out everything you can about this neutral ground meeting. I want to know who suggested it, where they want it, and every possible angle for a double cross." As Marco left, Dorian came around the desk, crouching beside my chair. "Nina, I need you to understand something. This isn't a business negotiation. This isn't numbers on a spreadsheet. The Bratva wants war. They're testing me, seeing if I'll back down. And if I show any weakness, every other family will start pushing too, which means people are going to die. A lot. Of people." "I understand." "Do you? Because once this starts, there's no going back. There's no moral high ground, no clean hands, just survival." I cupped his face, holding his gaze. "I watched you kill Anthony Greco. I've sat in meetings where we discussed making examples of people. I've cleaned blood off your hands more times than I can count. I'm not naive, Dorian. I know what this life is. And I'm still here. I'm still yours." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Okay, then you're in this, all the way in. But that means you follow my lead when it comes to security. No arguments, no independence plays. If I say you go to the safe room, you go. Understood?" "Understood." An hour later, the office was crowded with Dorian's captains. 12 men who controlled different aspects of the operation. They filed in, most nodding respectfully to me, though a few still looked uncomfortable with my presence. Dorian didn't waste time with pleasantries. The Bratva hit red. Hook. 4 dead, warehouse destroyed, millions in product gone. They want a meeting tomorrow to discuss terms. What they really want is to see if I'll blink. Assessments. The captains took turns reporting. The Bratva had been expanding aggressively for months. They'd made overtures to several of our ally families, trying to peel them away. They had muscle, but their infrastructure was weak. Their leader, Alexei Volkov, was young, ambitious, and had something to prove after his father's death. When it came to my turn, all eyes shifted to me. I took a breath, centering myself. The meeting is a trap. They're not looking for terms, they're looking for an opening. Alexei needs a win to consolidate his power. Killing you would be that win. Agreed, Dorian said. Which is why I'm not going to the meeting. Silence. Then, boss, if you don't show, they'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as what it is, me not being an idiot. Dorian's voice was hard. But we're not ignoring them, either. We're going to send a message of our own. He looked at me. Nina, the Bratva's legitimate business is what? I'd studied their operation for exactly this reason. Import-export, mainly electronics and luxury goods through Port Newark. They also have a stake in 3 restaurants and a nightclub in Brighton Beach. What would cripple them financially? Hitting the port operations. If we can disrupt their shipping routes or get their cargo flagged by customs, they lose millions and their reputation with suppliers. Dorian's smile was cold and sharp. Exactly. Marco, I want eyes on every container ship they have scheduled for the next 2 weeks. Giovanni, call our contact at customs. I want random inspections on every single Bratva shipment. Make sure they find something. I don't care if you have to plant it yourself. Luca, their nightclub in Brighton Beach, I want code violations, fire marshal inspections, health department complaints. Bury them in bureaucracy. And what? About tomorrow's meeting? Marco asked. Send an empty car to the meeting location, remote-controlled, windows tinted. Let them shoot it up if they want. Meanwhile, we hit 3 of their fronts simultaneously: restaurants, strip club, and their sports betting operation in Queens. We don't kill anyone unless fired upon. We just deliver a message. You hit one of ours, we hit 3 of yours. And we do it better. The captains were nodding now, faces grim but approving. This was strategy, not just brute force. One more thing, I said quietly. Everyone turned to me. Alexei's second in command is his cousin, Dmitri. They've been fighting for control. Start a rumor that Dmitri was the one who suggested the meeting location. Make Alexei think his own family is setting him up. Paranoid leaders make mistakes. Dorian's eyes blazed with pride and something darker. You heard the lady. Make it happen. I want everything coordinated for tomorrow, 2 p.m., the same time as their fake meeting, and, gentlemen, make it loud. I want the Bratva to know exactly who they're fucking with. The next day, I sat in the secure office in the basement of the estate, watching multiple screens showing feeds from various locations. Dorian was beside me, phone in hand, coordinating the operation with the calm precision of a conductor leading an orchestra of violence. At 2:00 p.m. exactly, multiple things happened at once. The empty car arrived at the meeting location, a warehouse in Bayonne. Bratva soldiers emerged from hiding and opened fire, riddling it with bullets. It took them 2 minutes to realize it was empty. By then, Dorian's men had already hit their 3 locations. The Brighton Beach nightclub's fire suppression system mysteriously activated, flooding the place and destroying thousands in sound equipment and liquor. The restaurant in Little Odessa had a surprise health inspection that found rodent droppings. Planted, but who could prove it? And the sports betting operation found every computer wiped, all their data gone, months of records vanished. Beautiful, Dorian murmured, watching it unfold. Clean, coordinated, and completely legal. They can't even call the cops without exposing their own operations. His phone rang. He answered, listened, then smiled coldly. Alexei, did you enjoy the meeting? I hope my car made a good impression. I couldn't hear the response, but I could imagine the rage. Here's the thing, Alexei. You made a mistake. You thought hitting my warehouse would make me look weak. Instead, you just showed everyone that the Bratva doesn't know the difference between a display of force and an act of war. Now your operations are crippled, your cousin is questioning your leadership, and every family in this city knows you started a fight you can't finish. More angry Russian on the other end. No, Alexei. Here's what happens next. You pull your people back from my territories. You apologize, publicly, for the deaths of my men. And you pay restitution. 5 million, delivered by the end of the week. Or, he paused, letting the silence stretch. I don't hit back with bureaucracy next time. I hit back with blood. And I promise you, your organization can't survive the kind of war I'm capable of. He hung up. Then he pulled me into his lap, kissing me hard and possessive. You brilliant, vicious woman. The rumor about Dmitri was genius. Alexei just spent 10 minutes accusing his own cousin of betrayal instead of focusing on me. I learned from the best, I said, even as my hands shook slightly from the adrenaline. Is it over? For now. He'll posture, make threats, but he knows he overplayed his hand. The other families are watching. If he backs down, he looks weak. If he escalates, he looks reckless. Either way, he loses. I rested my head against his shoulder, letting the tension drain from my body. I was terrified. You didn't show it. I've had practice hiding fear. 3 years of physical therapy teaches you how to smile through pain. He tilted my chin up, his expression tender. You never have to hide from me, Tesoro. Not your fear, not your pain, not anything. When it's just us, you can be as terrified or as fierce or as broken as you feel. I'll love you anyway. You love me. It wasn't a question, but I needed to say it out loud. Desperately, completely, irrevocably. He kissed my forehead, my cheeks, my mouth. You're the strongest person I know, Nina. And I'm so fucking in love with you it actually scares me. Good, I whispered. Because I love you too. And it terrifies me. Because now I have something to lose again. Then we protect each other. We build this empire together, and we make sure no one can ever take it from us. Deal? Deal. The next 3 weeks were relatively quiet. Alexei paid the restitution, pulled his people back, and the Bratva's expansion into our territory stopped cold. Word spread through the 5 boroughs. Il Diavolo's wife was not to be underestimated. The families started bringing their complex deals to me, knowing I'd find the angles they'd missed. I became known as La Regina Nera, the Black Queen. Dorian's secret weapon. The woman who could destroy you with a spreadsheet as efficiently as he could with a bullet. But I should have known the peace wouldn't last. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in the library, reviewing contracts for a new restaurant acquisition, when I heard tires screeching outside. Then gunfire. A lot of gunfire. Luca burst through the library door, blood streaming from a cut on his temple. Mrs. Ashcroft, we need to get you to the safe room, now. What's happening? I was already rolling toward him, my heart hammering. The Bratva. They're hitting the estate. 12 men, maybe more. Dorian's pinned down in the east wing with Marco. Come on! He grabbed my chair, pushing me faster than I could wheel myself. We made it halfway to the safe room when a window exploded inward, glass raining down. A man in black tactical gear rolled through, gun raised. Luca shoved my chair behind a column and returned fire, but I saw the moment he was hit, shoulder, then chest. He went down hard. The Bratva soldier stepped over Luca's body, advancing on me. The famous queen, he said in heavily accented English. Alexei sends his regards. He raised his gun, and I knew I was going to die. 3 years surviving the accident, 3 months building a new life, and it was going to end in my own library, at the hands of a stranger. Then Dorian appeared behind the soldier like a shadow, silent and lethal. He broke the man's neck with his bare hands before the soldier even knew he was there. The body crumpled, and Dorian was beside me instantly, checking me for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" "No, I'm fine. Luca." "I know. Marco's getting him to the medical team. Come on, we need to move." He lifted me from my chair, cradling me against his chest, as he moved through the house with practiced efficiency. Around us, I could hear gunfire, shouts, breaking glass. Dorian's phone buzzed. He answered it one-handed, not breaking stride. "Status." Pause. "How many?" Another pause, and his jaw clenched. "Burn them out. I don't want a single one alive to report back. And Giovanni, when this is over, I want to know how they got past our perimeter. Someone fucked up, and I want to know who." He carried me down a hidden staircase to a reinforced room I hadn't known existed. The walls were concrete, the door solid steel. Inside were enough weapons to outfit a small army, several monitors showing feeds of the estate, and basic supplies. "You stay here," Dorian said, setting me on a bench. "No matter what you hear, no matter what you see on those screens, you don't leave this room until I come back for you. Understood?" "Dorian." "No arguments, Nina. Not about this." He cupped my face, his eyes fierce. "I will come back for you. But I need to know you're safe first. I need to know that if the worst happens, you're protected. Please, Tesoro, let me protect you." I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. "Come back to me. Always." He kissed me, hard and desperate and promising. Then he was gone, the steel door locking behind him with a final, ominous click. I was alone. I turned to the monitors, watching the battle unfold across my home. Dorian's men were well-trained, professional, but the Bratva had numbers. I counted 16 attackers, maybe more. I watched Dorian move through the chaos like death itself, each movement efficient, brutal, beautiful in its lethality. He wasn't just defending his home, he was sending a message. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. On the east monitor, showing the garden, I saw a figure I recognized from intelligence reports. Alexei Volkov himself, heading toward the safe room entrance. Toward me. He had 4 men with him, all armed, moving with purpose. They knew where I was. Someone had told them. I looked, at the weapons on the wall, then at my useless legs, and felt rage boil up inside me. I was not going to die cowering in a safe room. If Alexei wanted the Black Queen, he was going to get her. I pulled myself across the floor to the weapons wall, selected a handgun I'd trained with. Yes, Dorian had insisted I learn to shoot, and positioned myself at an angle where I'd have clear sightlines to the door. Then I waited. The sounds of them breaking through the outer door echoed through the concrete. They were good, but not good enough to be quiet. "In here!" Alexei's voice, excited and vicious. "The devil's precious wife. Let's see how tough he is when we send him back her pieces." The steel door started to buckle under their assault. They had explosives. Of course they did. I steadied my breathing, remembered everything Dorian had taught me. Center mass. Squeeze. Don't pull. Aim for the threat. The door blew inward with a deafening boom. Smoke filled the room. Through it, I saw Alexei's silhouette, and I fired. My first shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. My second missed as he dove for cover. His men returned fire, bullets sparking off concrete, and I rolled behind a metal cabinet, my heart racing. "You stupid bitch!" Alexei's voice was ragged with pain. "Do you know what I'm going to do to you?" "Probably die before you get the chance," I shouted back, blind firing around the cabinet. I heard a scream, one of his men, then footsteps, coming closer. I had maybe 4 rounds left, against 4 men. The odds were not in my favor. Then the lights went out. Everything went pitch black, and I heard Alexei curse in Russian. I stayed perfectly still, controlling my breathing, listening. Footsteps to my left. 2 sets. More to my right. They were trying to flank me. And then, cutting through the darkness, I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Dorian's voice, low and deadly. Alexei, you made a mistake coming to my home, but coming for my wife? That's the last mistake you'll ever make. Gunfire erupted in the enclosed space, muzzle flashes illuminating the chaos. I saw Dorian, moving like liquid shadow, taking down Alexei's men with brutal efficiency. 1, 2, 3 bodies hit the floor. Then silence. Nina? Dorian's voice tight with concern. Here, I'm okay. The lights came back on. Dorian stood in the doorway, blood spattered across his face and shirt, guns still raised. And at his feet, bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds, was Alexei Volkov. Dorian crossed the room in 3 strides, checking me for injuries with shaking hands. Did he hurt you? Did any of them touch you? No. I shot Alexei first, actually. Shoulder wound. Dorian's eyes widened. Then, incredibly, he started laughing. It was a wild, slightly unhinged sound, but genuine. You shot him. My wife shot the head of the Bratva. In my defense, he was trying to kill me. Tesoro, you're fucking incredible. He pulled me against him, kissing me, fiercely. Then he looked down at Alexei, who was still breathing, barely. You wanted war, you piece of shit. You got it. He crouched beside Alexei, and his voice went absolutely cold. You killed my men. You attacked my home, and you tried to hurt my wife. Those are 3 death sentences. But I'm going to give you 1 chance to make this right. Who told you about the safe room? Who gave you the layout of my estate? Alexei coughed blood. Fuck! You! Wrong answer. Dorian pressed on Alexei's shoulder wound, and the man screamed. Who told you? One of yours, Alexei gasped out. Said he was tired of following orders from a woman. Said she was making you weak. My blood ran cold. Someone in Dorian's organization had betrayed us, betrayed him because of me. Dorian's face went absolutely murderous. Name. Don't know, never met him, just phone calls. But he's close to you, real close. Said he'd been with your family for years. Then Alexei's eyes went glassy, and he stopped breathing. Dorian stood slowly, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Marco! Marco appeared in the doorway, looking worse for wear but alive. Yeah, boss? Gather everyone who was on the estate tonight. Everyone. I don't care if they're bleeding out. I want them in the main hall in 10 minutes. We have a traitor to find. The main hall looked like a war zone. 23 men, all bearing various injuries, stood in a line facing Dorian. I was beside him, back in my chair, and I could feel the rage radiating off him in waves. Someone here betrayed us, Dorian said, his voice carrying across the hall. Someone gave the Bratva the layout of my home, told them where my wife would be, how to breach our defenses, and Alexei claimed this person has been with my family for years. The men shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to each other. Now, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, the traitor steps forward now, and I'll make his death quick. Hard way, I investigate every single one of you, trace every phone call, every financial transaction, every movement for the past 6 months. And when I find him, and I will find him, his death will be very, very slow. Silence. No one moved. Dorian's hands clenched into fists. Then Marco spoke up. Boss, if I may? Go ahead. There's a list of who knew the safe room location. Only your inner circle. That's 11 people, including me. We should start there. I watched the men's faces as Marco spoke. Most showed appropriate levels of shock and fear. But one, Sal, the oldest, the one who had served Dorian's father, his face had gone very still, very controlled, too controlled. Dorian, I said quietly. Sal hasn't said anything. All eyes turned to the old soldier. He met my gaze steadily, no guilt, no fear, just, Resignation. It was you, I said. Not a question. Sal nodded slowly. It was me. The hall erupted in shouts, but Dorian's voice cut through it all. Quiet, he stalked toward Sal, moving like a predator. Why? Because she's making you soft, boss. I've watched you turn from Il Diavolo into a lovesick fool. We used to rule through fear. Now we negotiate. We compromise. We let families like the Bertellis walk away from stealing millions because your wife says it's better for business. And that justifies trying to have her killed? Dorian's voice was deadly quiet. That justifies letting the Bratva into my home? I thought if you lost her, you'd become the man you used to be, the man your father raised you to be. Hard, ruthless, uncompromising. Dorian stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to me. What do you think, Tesoro? How should I handle this? The entire hall held its breath. I looked at Sal, this man who had served Dorian's family for decades, who had fought beside Dorian's father, who had helped raise Dorian himself. And I thought about mercy versus strategy, about message sending versus personal feelings. I think, I said carefully, that Sal is wrong about you being soft. You're not soft, Dorian. You're evolved. The old ways of doing business, rule through fear alone, never compromise, never strategize. Those ways are dying out. They get families destroyed. You're building something that will last because you're smart enough to adapt. I looked at Sal directly. But he's right about one thing. Betrayal has only one consequence. And it doesn't matter how long you've served or how good your intentions were. You endangered lives. You tried to have me killed. And you put Dorian's trust, the most valuable currency in this world, through a paper shredder. I turned back to Dorian. Make an example of him. Not because you're ruthless, but because you're consistent. Betrayal means death. Always. No exceptions. Dorian's eyes blazed with something fierce and proud. He looked at Sal. You served my father for 30 years. You taught me how to fight, how to shoot, how to lead. And I loved you like an uncle. Sal's expression finally cracked, showing remorse. I'm sorry, boss. I truly thought you thought wrong. And worse, you let your fear of change blind you to what Nina really is. She's not making me soft, Sal. She's making me stronger, smarter, more dangerous than I've ever been. Because now I have the brutality you respect and the strategy you never valued. That combination is what builds empires that last. He pulled his gun. You were like family to me, Sal. So I'll make this quick. More mercy than you showed Nina. The shot echoed through the hall. Sal's body hit the marble floor with a sickening thud. Dorian stood over him for a long moment, his face carved from stone. Then he turned to address the others. Let this be a lesson. I don't care how long you've served. I don't care what your justifications are. You betray this family, you betray me, and you die. No exceptions. No mercy. And anyone else who thinks my wife is a weakness should know this. She's the most dangerous person in this room, including me. He walked back to me, holstered his weapon, and pulled me into his arms. You okay? He murmured against my hair. I just watched you kill a man who was like family. Am I okay? I laughed, slightly hysterical. I don't know, Dorian. I think maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I haven't been okay since the warehouse. Maybe I'll never be okay again. Then we'll be not okay together. He held me tighter. Come on, let's get cleaned up. This night is over. Later, in our bathroom, Dorian carefully washed the blood from my hands. Alexei's blood, from when I'd checked his pulse to confirm he was dead. The water ran pink, then clear. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. You shot Alexei. You survived. You helped me identify the traitor. You're becoming just like you, I interrupted. That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? That I'm becoming as ruthless as you are. No, I was going to say you're becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. The woman who understands that power requires sacrifice, that leadership requires hard choices, that love doesn't make you weak, It makes you terrifying because now you have something to protect. I looked at our reflection in the mirror. Me, in his arms, exhaustion and something darker written across my face. Him, still spattered with blood, holding me like I was precious. Is this love? I asked softly. This violent, bloody, ruthless thing we have? Yes, he said simply. This is love. At least, it's our love, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I turned in his arms, looking up at him. I love you, Dorian Ashcroft. God help me, I love you more than I thought I could love anything. I love you, Nina Ashcroft. My queen, my partner, my salvation. We made love that night with a desperation born of almost loss, of blood and adrenaline, and the knowledge that this life we'd chosen could be cut short at any moment. And when we finally collapsed together, exhausted and sated, I thought, this is who I am now, not the ballerina, not the pitied daughter, but the Black Queen, and I'm not sorry. 6 months later, I sat in Dorian's office, our office now, reviewing quarterly reports while he took a call with a senator about zoning laws. Life had settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for legitimate business, afternoons for the families, less legitimate operations. Evenings were ours alone. The Bratva had fractured after Alexei's death. Half had been absorbed into our operations. The other half had retreated to Brighton Beach and knew better than to test us again. The other families had learned that underestimating the Ashcrofts, either of us, was a fatal mistake. I'd expanded our legitimate holdings to include 3 restaurant chains, a luxury car dealership, and a stake in a tech startup that was about to go public. Our legal revenue was actually outpacing our illegal operations, which made everyone nervous except me and Dorian. You were right, he'd told me last week. Diversification is the future. My father would have fought it. I'm embracing it, because you showed me how. The door opened and Marco entered, tablet in hand. Mrs. Ashcroft, the mayor's office called. They want you to speak at the Italian-American Heritage Foundation Gala next month. About what? Your charitable work with disabled youth. His mouth quirked. Apparently you've become quite the role model. I'd started a foundation 6 months ago, using Dorian's money to provide adaptive equipment, physical therapy, and career training for people with disabilities. It was legitimate philanthropy and excellent PR. I'll do it. Send them my acceptance. As Marco left, I caught sight of myself in the reflection of the office windows. Designer clothes, hair professionally styled, the black diamond wedding ring glinting on my finger. I looked every inch the Mafia queen, and in my chair, I looked every inch powerful, not despite it, because of it, because I'd stopped, apologizing for taking up space, stopped making myself smaller to make others comfortable. Dorian hung up his call and came to sit on the edge of the desk beside me. What are you thinking about? How far I've come. A year ago, I was hiding in my childhood bedroom, listening to my family plan my future like I wasn't there. Now I'm planning our empire's future, and they all have to listen. Any regrets? None. I looked up at him. You? He cupped my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. Nina, you're the best decision I ever made. Business arrangement or not, partnership or not, I'd do it all again, every single moment. Even the parts where we almost died? Especially those parts. They reminded me what we're fighting for, what we're building. And Tesoro, he leaned down, pressing his forehead to mine. We're just getting started. 1 year later, almost to the day of our wedding, I sat beside Dorian at the head table of a gala, honoring the Ashcroft family's contributions to the city. 500 people in black tie, including the mayor, 3 senators, and representatives from every major family in the Northeast. I wore crimson, a designer gown that cost more than a car, with a custom wheelchair in matching red that looked less like medical equipment and more like a throne. Because that's what it was, my throne. As the MC called Dorian to the podium to accept an award for the family's charitable work, I watched him move through the crowd with the easy confidence of a man who owned every room he entered. When he reached the stage, he didn't launch into his prepared remarks. Instead, he looked directly at me. A year and a half ago, I made what everyone thought was an insane decision. I married a woman I barely knew, in a ceremony that lasted 10 minutes, for reasons that probably seemed purely strategic. The crowd laughed politely. But the truth is, I knew exactly what I was doing. I was marrying the smartest, strongest, most formidable person I'd ever met. Someone who would challenge me, push me, make me better than I ever thought I could be. He descended from the stage, walking directly to me. "Nina, would you join me?" I rolled to the stage lift. Yes, they'd installed one for me, not because I'd asked, but because they knew better than not to, and rose to meet him. He took my hand, pulling me to stand at the podium beside him, his arm supporting me. "My wife has transformed our family in every way imaginable. She's built businesses that will outlast us all. She's created opportunities for people who society had written off, just like they'd written her off. She's proven that strength has nothing to do with whether you can walk, and everything to do with whether you can rise." He looked at me, his eyes blazing with love and pride. "And she's shown me that the most powerful partnerships aren't built on fear or obligation, but on mutual respect, honest communication, and the courage to be vulnerable with the one person you trust above all others." The crowd was dead silent now, hanging on every word. "So this award, this recognition, it's not mine, it's ours. Nina Ashcroft, my wife, my queen, my partner in everything. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for building this empire with me. And thank you for showing me that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you unstoppable." He kissed me then, in front of 500 people, and the crowd erupted in applause. When we broke apart, I took the microphone. My hand shook slightly, but my voice was steady. A year and a half ago, I was ready to give up on myself. I'd lost my career, my identity, my sense of purpose. I thought being paralyzed meant my life was effectively over. And then I met a man who saw past my wheelchair to the person I actually am. Who gave me not pity, but opportunity. Not mercy, but partnership. Who expected me to be strong, not in spite of my disability, but as a complete person who happens to use a wheelchair. I looked out at the crowd, seeing people I'd done business with, families I'd negotiated with, enemies I'd defeated. To everyone who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you're less than because you're different, I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. Your worth isn't determined by other people's limitations. It's determined by what you choose to do with the hand you're dealt, and I chose to play to win. The applause was deafening. That night, in our bedroom, Dorian undressed me slowly, reverently. "You were magnificent tonight, Tesoro." "We were magnificent," I corrected him. "This is a partnership, remember?" "How could I forget? You remind me every time I try to make a unilateral decision." But he was smiling, that rare, genuine smile he saved only for me. We made love slowly, taking our time, savoring each touch and kiss, and whispered endearment. And afterward, as I lay in his arms, I felt a peace I'd thought I'd never know again. "I'm happy," I said, surprised by the truth of it. "For the first time since the accident, I'm actually happy." "Good." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "That's all I've ever wanted. Your happiness, your power, your safety, in that order." "Liar. Safety is definitely first." "You're right, but I've learned that keeping you safe often means trusting you to protect yourself. You're not my damsel, Nina. You're my equal, my sword and my shield." Pretty words, Il Diavolo. True words, Mia Regina. We fell asleep tangled together, secure in our fortress, surrounded by our empire. And if I dreamed about dancing sometimes, about the life I used to have, I didn't mourn it anymore. Because this life, This violent, beautiful, powerful life I'd built with Dorian was better than anything I could have choreographed. 5 years later, the conference room of Ashcroft Enterprises was filled with lawyers, accountants, and representatives from 3 major families. At the head of the table sat Dorian, looking every inch the legitimate businessman in his custom suit. To his right sat me, my chair positioned at the perfect height to review documents and make notes. The merger will create the largest legitimate construction and development company in the Northeast, I explained, pulling up projections on the screen. We bring the financing and political connections. The Bertelli and Marchetti families bring the construction expertise and union relationships. It's a 3-way partnership with equal profit distribution and rotating board leadership. Vincent Bertelli, now in his 60s, nodded approvingly. Your wife drives a hard bargain, Dorian. She always has. Dorian's hand rested on my shoulder, a gesture so familiar now it was almost unconscious. That's why she's the CEO of our legitimate operations while I focus on other matters. Translation: I ran the legal empire while Dorian ran the family business. We'd completely restructured over the past 5 years, separating legitimate and illegitimate operations to the point where our legal holdings actually exceeded our illegal ones. The meeting lasted another hour, ending with signed contracts and handshakes. As the others filed out, Marco lingered. Boss, we have an issue with the new shipment from Sicily. Handle it, Dorian said without looking up from his phone. I trust your judgment. After Marco left, I raised an eyebrow. You just delegated. You never delegate. I'm learning. You've been telling me to trust my people for years. Besides, he leaned down, mouth close to my ear. I have better things to do than micromanage, like taking my wife home and reminding her exactly why she married me. Heat pooled low in my belly. We have that charity board meeting at 7. It's barely 3. That gives us at least 3 hours. You're insatiable. Only for you, Tesoro. Only ever for you. As we left the building, I caught sight of us in the reflective glass. Dorian in his power suit, me in mine, my wheelchair gleaming like polished steel. We looked like what we were: power couple, empire builders, partners in every sense of the word. We'd come so far from that desperate girl in a wheelchair and the cold mafia boss who saw her potential. Now we were legends, stories whispered in back rooms and boardrooms alike. The devil and his black queen, ruthless, strategic, unstoppable, and deeply, irrevocably in love. That night, as I prepared for the charity gala, I caught my reflection in the mirror. 30 years old now, 6 years since the accident. My hair was longer, shot through with a few premature silver strands that my stylist begged to color, but I refused. Battle scars, I called them. My body was strong from years of adapted yoga and upper body training, and my eyes, they held a confidence, a fierceness, that the young ballerina I'd been would never have recognized. Dorian appeared behind me in the mirror, fastening his cufflinks. What are you thinking about? How different I am now. How different we are. Better? Infinitely. I turned my chair to face him. You know what I realized today? Tell me. I don't remember the last time I wished I could walk. I don't think about it anymore. This, I gestured to my chair, isn't a limitation. It's just part of who I am. Like your scars, or your tattoos, or your absolute refusal to delegate until I nag you into it. He crouched down, taking my hands in his. You're the strongest person I know, Nina. Not despite your disability, not because you've overcome it. Just strong, complete, perfect exactly as you are. I'm not perfect. You are to me. You're my partner, my queen, my best decision, and my greatest love. You're the woman who shot a Bratva leader, negotiated peace with 4 families, built a legitimate empire, and still makes time to kick my ass at chess twice a week. You're everything, Tesoro. Everything I never knew I needed, and everything I'll never deserve. Tears burned behind my eyes. I love you, Dorian Ashcroft. more than I thought I could love anything or anyone. You gave me back my life, my power, my purpose. You saw me when everyone else just saw what I'd lost. I love you, Nina Ashcroft, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that this, he gestured between us, was never about what you could or couldn't do. It was always about who you are, the most remarkable woman I've ever met. We kissed then, deep and slow and full of promise. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Ready to go show the world how it's done? Always. As we entered the gala, me in midnight blue, my chair customized to match, Dorian in black tie beside me, the crowd parted. Not out of pity, not out of awkwardness, but out of respect. Because they knew. We were the Ashcrofts, the couple who'd redefined what power looked like, who'd built an empire on strategy and strength and the absolute refusal to accept limitations. People nodded to us, greeted us, vied for our attention. Politicians wanted endorsements. Business people wanted partnerships. Society figures wanted to be seen with us. And through it all, Dorian's hand stayed on my shoulder, a constant reminder. We were in this together, always. When the music started and couples moved to the dance floor, Dorian leaned down. I wish I could dance with you. You do dance with me, just differently. I smiled up at him. Besides, I have the better view from down here, and everyone's watching us anyway, wondering what we'll do next, how we'll surprise them, what move we'll make to stay on top. Let them wonder, let them watch. All that matters is that we know the truth. Which is? That we already won. The moment you said yes. The moment you became mine, and I became yours. Everything else is just victory laps. I laughed, the sound genuine and joyful. You're getting sentimental in your old age, Il Diavolo. Only with you, Mia Regina. Only ever with you. I sat in our office, the one we designed together 5 years ago, with 2 desks side by side, accessible everything, windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. I was reviewing a contract when I heard the door open behind me. Mrs. Ashcroft? I turned. A young woman stood there, maybe 23, in a wheelchair similar to mine. She held a resume in shaking hands. I'm here for the internship interview. Emily, right? Come in. I gestured to the conference table. Tell me about yourself. She wheeled forward nervously. I graduated last year with a degree in business economics. But every interview I go to, all they see is... She gestured to her chair. This. I've been told I'm not a good fit 7 times. That my limitations would make it difficult to keep up with the pace of the workplace. That maybe I should consider disability benefits instead of corporate careers. I knew that story. I'd lived that story. Emily, let me tell you something. The people who told you that are idiots and cowards because they're so afraid of anything different that they can't see past their own prejudices to recognize talent. Her eyes widened. But you're Nina Ashcroft. You're legendary. You built an empire. You didn't face... I faced exactly that. 3 years of being treated like I was broken. Like my paralysis meant my brain stopped working. Like the best I could hope for was to be quietly supported by my family until I died. And you know what changed? What? I stopped accepting their limitations as truth. I found partners who saw my potential. And I built a life so big, so successful, so powerful, that no one could ignore me anymore. Not despite my wheelchair. Not because I overcame it. But because I'm damn good at what I do. And my wheelchair is just the thing I sit in while I'm being excellent. Emily's expression transformed from nervous to hopeful. Does that mean you're hired? Starting salary is 20% above market rate because you're going to work your ass off, and I pay for results. You'll work directly with me for 6 months, learning how to navigate corporate environments, how to handle discrimination like the weapon it can be turned into, and how to build the kind of career where you're not asking for a seat at the table. You own the damn table. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Thank you. Thank you so much. I promise I won't let you down. I know you won't. Because you're hungry. You're smart. And you've already survived things that would break other people. That's the raw material of success, Emily. The rest is just strategy. After she left, Dorian appeared from his adjacent office. Another protege? Someone who reminds me of who I used to be. Scared, angry, desperate for someone to see past the chair. You're changing lives, Tesoro. He pulled me into his arms, building a whole new generation of people who refuse to be limited. We're changing lives. This empire we built, it's not just about money or power anymore. It's about showing people that strength comes in infinite forms. That disability doesn't mean inability, that the only real limitations are the ones we accept. He kissed my temple. I'm so fucking proud of you. I'm proud of us. We took the worst moments of our lives and built something beautiful and terrible and powerful from them. No regrets? None. I looked up at him. You know what the crazy thing is? Sometimes I'm almost grateful for the accident. Not because it happened, but because it led me here. To you. To this life. To becoming someone I never would have been if I'd stayed on the path I was on. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Or maybe just perfect timing. I smiled. Either way, I wouldn't change a thing. Not the accident, not the warehouse, not the violence or the danger or any of it, because it made me who I am. It made us who we are. The devil and his black queen. Partners. Equals. Forever. Forever, he agreed. That night we stood. He stood, I sat in my chair, on our penthouse, terrace, looking out over the city we'd conquered together. Lights sparkled like stars below us, millions of lives being lived, millions of stories being written. Do you ever think about the girl you were? Dorian asked quietly. The ballerina with the perfect life and the conventional future? Sometimes, but it feels like looking at a stranger now, like that was someone else's life. This, I gestured to the city, to us, to everything we'd built. This is my life, the real one, the one I chose, even if the choice came wrapped in trauma and loss. You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm ordinary. I just refuse to accept ordinary limitations. He laughed. There is nothing ordinary about you, Nina Ashcroft. You're a force of nature, a revolution wrapped in designer clothes and sitting in a custom throne. You're the reason I'm better than my father ever was. The reason our empire will outlast us. The reason I believe in something more than just survival. I reached up, pulling him down to kiss me. You gave me back my life, Dorian. Not by making me walk, but by making me powerful. By seeing me as complete when everyone else saw me as broken. By loving the woman I am, not the woman I used to be, or the woman I might have been. That's your gift. That's why I love you. I love you too, Mia Regina. More than territories or money or power, more than life itself. You're my everything. We stayed there for a long time, wrapped in each other and the empire we'd built, watching our city sparkle below us. And if anyone had told the girl I used to be, the ballerina who thought her life ended with her ability to walk, that this would be her future, she never would have believed it. But that girl was gone. In her place sat, the Black Queen, Nina Ashcroft, wife, partner, CEO, and revolutionary. A woman who had lost everything and rebuilt herself into something stronger, sharper, more powerful than she ever could have imagined. This was my story. Not of overcoming disability, but of refusing to let anyone else define what disability meant for my life. Not of being saved by a man, but of partnering with one to build an empire. Not of inspiration porn, but of raw, honest, complicated strength forged in fire and blood and love. I was paralyzed. I was powerful. And those two things had nothing to do with each other, except that I'd learned to weaponize the world's underestimation of me. Learned that a wheelchair could be a throne if you sat in it like a queen. Learned that love wasn't about being rescued, but about being seen. The August heat pressed against my skin, warm and alive, as I sat in my midnight blue gown on the terrace of my penthouse, my husband's hand on my shoulder, my empire spread before me like a gift. 28 years old, and this was not the life I'd planned. It was so much better. Because I hadn't needed to walk to rise. I just needed to refuse to fall. And I never would. Not ever again.